This is the limitless Keith Lee.
This is Brody King.
This is Angel Garza.
Will Ospreay.
Hornswoggle.
Pentagon Junior.
The villain, Marty Skell.
The Mexican Ray Phoenix.
King Ricochet.
Concrete Rose Sunny Kiss.
And I'm here to ask you to stop what you're doing, take just one moment, and bask in the glory of the Busted Wide Open.
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 Boston Wide Open.
Busted Wide Open podcast.
You're listening to the Busted Wide Open podcast, dropping the elbow on the hottest topics in sports entertainment and the world of professional wrestling. With your hosts, Nick Howell and Sir Ian Dangerous. Coming to you from the Orbital Jigsaw Network Arena in sunny Southern California. Welcome everybody to BW. Nope, this is not BWO Live. This is your patron bonus episode for February. Good Lord, it's been a long day. February 2021. My name is Nick Howell.
And I am Sir Ian Dangerous, and welcome, and welcome to the show, everybody. That's right, it's our bonus episode for you wonderful patrons out there. As always, thank you all so incredibly much for supporting this show and helping us out. And this is for you. This episode is for you. It is just for people who have paid into the Patreon. And if you are a new patron, then welcome and thank you. And if you are an existing patron, then thank you very much, and thanks for hanging out with us and for being a part of all of this. Today, it's going to be a little something different. Nick, we had some plans for this show, and they kind of got scuttled at the last minute because there was just a topic that came up that we just couldn't not talk about.
We haven't been able to sink our teeth into it the way that we wanted to on the regular show.
Well, to be clear, it's a topic that I will take this on the chin.
Ooh.
I have been brushing off on the regular show. Every time it comes up, I kind of go, yeah.
Every time I try to drive you down that path.
Yeah, I go, nah, everybody calm down. I turn into a wet blanket. The chat all piles on me. And you know what? I don't blame them. I'll openly admit I've been a bit of a wet blanket about this topic. And finally something happened that made me go, what? And the Raggy? And I had to stop myself and go, okay. There's a lot of people who are going to take different interpretations of all of the different things that have happened in wrestling over the last couple years. This is one that made me stand up and go, holy crap. And it was not Kenny Omega taking the title to Impact, although that's certainly a huge deal. It was not Kenta coming to AEW, although that's certainly a huge deal and indicates that relationships may be thawing between New Japan and AEW. It was not a lot of things that frankly have been going on in wrestling that maybe should have made me be doing, backflips and freaking out. It was Paul White, Big Show, signing with AEW that made me sit back in my chair and go, holy crap. That's a big deal. Pardon the pun. Yeah. So I wanted to take this episode to really just sit back and think about that, digest that, and then, Nick, really think about the Forbidden Door. And not just New Japan, which is kind of what we've always been using that for, having a collaboration with AEW. Yeah. But just the Forbidden Doors all over. The idea of wrestling companies working together a la the territory system, not like the monopoly system that's been in place for the last 20 years, ever since WWE bought WCW, and everyone else was essentially considered an indie with the exception of maybe a couple of years of TNA. This, to me, this was a sign. This is the shots fired. There's no Lex Luger moment, I don't think, for AEW. There's no the Radicals showing up in WWE. That hasn't really happened yet. But this is certainly a big enough deal that I wanted to discuss what is going on in terms of AEW, what's going on in terms of are the possibilities of these forbidden doors opening, what could be happening next, what's going on in WWE, how WWE is going to handle all of the having a true alternative, a place where people can go who are done with their company. This is what I'm starting out with, Nick, is that Big Show has said, I was fed up with what I was getting in WWE, how they were using me. I felt like I had more in the tank, more to give. Mick Foley actually tweeted at him that I feel like Big Show has more in the tank, and Big Show tweeted back at him, yes, that's exactly the case. I have more to give.
There was a while there where I would have disagreed, but the journey that he's been on with body transformation, thinning out, leaning out a little bit, like, damn, dude. And he's 49.
And that's the interesting. That's, I think, one aspect I want to start with is how big of a deal is Big Show going to AEW, in your opinion? Like I said, I don't think it's a Lex Luger shows up on Nitro, or I don't think that it's the Radical showing him a WWE level of a holy crap. Yeah. It's pretty big. That is a major, multiple time WWE champion, a major figure in WWE, who headlined WrestleMania last year, technically.
Yeah, he was the last act. Yeah.
He was the last act. Drew McIntyre to face him. So, and he was involved in some stuff early this year in WWE. Like, he came out on Legends Night. But it was pretty clear that WWE saw him in a certain role. You're going to come out. You're going to go, you're going to put people over. Yeah. And you're going to be a legend. You're going to go out and do legendy things. Yeah. You're pretty much winding down.
Which means they've written you off at that point where you're there to be a sort of dance monkey dance kind of,
Exactly. Yeah. And there's certain people that have found roles in WWE, JBL, Booker T immediately come to mind, where they're always being used. There's a commentary on the pay-per-views. WWE is still using them constantly. And Big Show they weren't using constantly. They were trotting him out every once in a while and being like, well, it's the Big Show. Okay, go away, big man. And that was it. We already know that he's going to go over to AEW. He's going to be on their new show. They're having a new YouTube show. It will be on Monday nights called AEW Dark Elevation. I imagine it's for like even more squash matches than we're already seeing on Dark. Dark's getting huge. Dark's already over 2 hours. So it might be for even like the newest of talents.
I wanted to talk about that too, because I think it's based on where they put it. There's some conversation to be had there on the schedule of things. You asked me a question though about what I thought about Paul White, and I want to make sure that
is it a big deal?
It's very much a big deal, but not for the reasons you might think, in my opinion.
What's that?
Big Show for me was right underneath Undertaker as one of those like WWE made guys. Like he's had financial troubles. Papa Vince and Trips and Steph have helped him out. There have been multiple times where I dare say saved him, but he's even come out and said that in the past. And this feels like the ultimate Big Show turn. If I'm being silly about it.
The man's known for heel turns.
He's known for turning frequently. I'm looking at this going, wow. And it wasn't a big deal. It was a big deal for him to go. It was an even bigger deal for him to come out and openly say he wasn't happy with XYZ. And basically, putting down WWE, Vince, the production, everything. So I look at this as not only something that is, how many times are we going to have to see and hear this until we start judging WWE a little more harshly? I feel like we already do that enough, but I feel like someone like Big Show across 3 to 4 decades in the business at this point he's not someone that's been wrestling for 10 years and is pouting a little bit. He's been around for decades. And for him, after going through what he's gone through, being the world's largest athlete, being known for that, the fact that he's pushing 50 and still wants to get in the ring and go, all of those things to me make this a very big deal. Not to mention that he's going to be effectively the face of this brand new show for AEW called Elevation that is going to go on YouTube at 7 p.m. on Monday nights, 1 hour before the start of Monday Night Raw. And here's why I think that is critical to the conversation of all of this. They are going to set the tone an hour before Raw comes on that Raw is going to have to follow. You never want to be a headlining band that your opening act upstaged or is upstaged.
I don't know
by.
I don't know if it will, because again, I don't know if it's going to be that kind of show. It's going to be, I think, more of the smaller talents of AEW. But the fact
I
is,
wouldn't rule
it's
that
still
out,
going
though.
to be. Well, no, you might have some bigger stars showing up, but I take your point. They're definitely. I don't think they're throwing any major competition on there. They're not even. It's on YouTube. You know what I mean?
We don't really know yet what it's going to be.
Well, so suffice it to say, I don't think they're going to be throwing major competition at WWE with it. But the fact that it is on that night means people are going to have to decide if they want to add another hour of wrestling to their night,
Or if they want to eliminate an hour or two of the other show.
Right, exactly.
There's some strategery here going on, and I like it.
It's interesting to look at that. It has been a long, long time since Big Show was on TNT, back when he was the Giant in WCW and had a lot to do in he was a major part of WCW before he went over to WWE and popped out of the ring at, I believe it was St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
97?
Yeah. And he's obviously been a major force in WWE ever since. Not a Hall of Famer. I wonder if this will actually scuttle his Hall of Fame induction by going over to AEW.
Probably.
He's basically saying AEW is going to allow me to commentate on the regular. I'm going to be there with a bunch of talent who really will pick my brain. You've got people who are over there right now who truly feel like they're being utilized. I'm seeing videos of Jake the Snake teaching promo class to a bunch of students in the audience. You know what I mean? Triple H doesn't sound like he's banging down Big Show's door. Hey, come teach a class at the PC. And you got a lot of bigger dudes over in AEW who could take some lessons from Big Show. So I can see why Big Show would be tempted by that. He doesn't have the sitcom anymore that's produced by WWE. He's probably looking at it and saying, I have reached my ceiling here, and I'm going to gamble on AEW. But that actually, I think that's something I want to come back to later. The idea that people now have a back door. They have an alternative, not just to watch, but to be employed by. I want to come back to that. But the first thing I want to talk about Big Show coming over is it a double standard? Because we talk about people who are older coming back to WWE and being somewhat part-timers, being involved, but maybe not all the time. And people get pissed. Why is Goldberg back? Why is Edge back? Although everyone's happy to see Edge because we didn't think he'd wrestle again. But, Taker coming in once a year, that kind of thing. Triple H coming out and having a match every so often. People look at that and they go, why is this tenured guy coming in and getting, top of the billing when all these younger guys need that space? Do you feel it's double standard for everyone to be excited about Big Show going to AEW with the possibility that he might wrestle?
What do you mean by double standard? Explain.
I mean, should we be like, Big Show's just going to take a slot from a younger guy over in AEW?
No. I don't think that's a concern at all. I mean, if we look at the landscape of AEW, it looks a lot like WCW in the mid-90s. I
mean, I'd say mid-south, but
sure.
Okay, sure.
Sure. But I mean, Sting and Jake and Big Show, there's all kinds of people over there now.
I see what you're saying in terms of
they're all back on TNT now.
Dean Malenko works for AEW.
Exactly, right?
Right, whatever. Yeah.
Jericho. I forgot to say Jericho. But I mean, I think there's an element of that, Ted Turner absolutely wanted to get back in the wrestling business. The Khans were there to financially back it. You had Cody and the Bucks and Kenny that were in the right place at the right time. All this sort of came together. And I think it's great that not only are they respecting legends the way they should be respected, using them for their knowledge to teach and coach and mentor, whether it's on TV or not, in backstage production meetings or classes, whatever that might be. They're not just taking them out and as puppets and dangling them from strings and going, hey, look at all these legends we've got, like WWE tends to do.
They're kind of doing that with Sting a little bit, to be honest.
That man took a power bomb from Brian Cage last week.
Yeah, and he was out there getting Stinger splashes this week. But I mean, that's spoiler. Yeah. But the thing is that I think my perspective on this is similar to yours in that in WWE, that's what I like to call the Goldberg effect. You bring in a bigger, older star, and he just wipes the floor with your young talent and wins your heavyweight championship. Yeah. He squashed Kevin Owens, took the belt, and then had a feud with Brock Lesnar, who's a part-timer as well. In AEW, we're seeing the older talent being used proportionate to what they can do, right? I complain about Sting being kind of a centerpiece. He hasn't closed out a show. He's in the middle of the shows. He's there supporting Darby Allin, trying to get Darby Allin over. That's his purpose for being there, trying to get Cage over, right? He's there in a supportive role. There's not an older talent there who I feel is dominating the scene or coming in and working part-time, coming in and working for a month and then leaving for a while.
They're there to put the talent that they're supporting front and center.
We joke about how everyone has a manager in AEW, right? That's a really good way to use them. Have them have Taz as a manager, Jake the Snake as a manager.
Even Vicky.
Tully Blanchard. Even Vicky. WWE didn't have anything for her. She came over. So, yeah, I don't think that it's apples for apples in terms of how AEW is using their older talent. And I think that that's actually telling in terms of, why some talent that isn't being brought into WWE looks at someone like Big Show, Mick Foley, or someone like that, Kurt Angle, and says, you can be an authority figure. You can be a commentator, you can be a top star and come in part-time and squash people, or you can be a legend and be off on the side and go to charity events and stuff like that. We'll use you when we feel like it, like Mark Henry.
Yeah.
And I can understand why someone like Big Show is going to say, we should call him Paul White now. He's going to say, no, I want to be out there every week doing something. I want to matter. So I think it's a big deal that he's going over there because it says to every other talent that WWE has sidelined right now, you know what? If you play your cards right, this is an option.
There are opportunities elsewhere. This isn't the end-all, be-all. And I think that's another thing for WWE to keep in mind when it comes to talent relations, that they have options now. You've enjoyed a 20-year streak where you've been king of the mountain.
The only horse in the race.
You were top of the mountain, and you're not up there alone anymore, per se.
I mean, you had 5 years where people could go to TNA and get a paycheck, and then doing that TNA was the land of misfit toys for a while there. Anyone who got fired by WWE, even Ric Flair, WWE made him retire, and he went to TNA unretired. So it's a whole new ball game now. But Nick, before we move on, I do want to catch up here. I know we have some things to catch
Will
up
James
on
threw in 100 bits, said, given this is the February bonus episode, I'm assuming it will be the best WWE love stories of all time, starting with Nick's all-time favorite, Triple H, absconding with Stephanie McMahon and marrying her by a Elvis or something in Vegas. I don't remember what it was.
She was drugged and unconscious. I don't even think it was Elvis. It was just a drive.
It was a Beetlejuice wedding. Yes, I love this man of mine.
I love this man of mine. Great movie. But yeah, exactly. No, sadly, we did not decide to go themey this year.
That was on the list. But we keep kicking that can down the road for obvious reasons.
Greatest love stories in WWE.
Because there's not many great love ones at all.
Bubba Ray Dudley and tables.
Bubba Ray Dudley.
He's got putting old ladies through tables.
Go. Yeah. Thank you, Will James. Costanza resubscribed with a tier 2 for 7 months on a 7-month streak. Thank you so much, Costanza. You. Tier 2, man. That's 7 months of tier 2. Holy smokes.
Nice.
Thank you so much.
That's a lot of chick.
What was I going to say? Oh, and he gets one of these.
Chicken. Good.
Chicken.
Didn't break the stream this
No,
time.
it didn't.
It's
It
awesome.
worked.
Hey. So I want to come back to the idea of there's an alternative now, because I want to talk about the fact that the forbidden door is open. We're seeing people we didn't expect going to AEW, including Kenta from New Japan. He went there. He showed up on AEW. You have people in AEW showing up at Impact. Kenny Omega showed up there with the title. The Good Brothers showing up over on AEW. Private Party coming back over and feuding with the Good Brothers. Matt Hardy coming over. Like there are crossovers. Crossovers are happening. NWA. It's their champion, the female champion Serena Deeb is on AEW on the regular.
When does Nick Aldis walk through the door at AEW?
I don't know. He said that people from AEW had an attitude when they walked into Impact. So apparently Nick Aldis is still Nick Aldising his way around the world.
Wow. Okay.
So, Nick. But so that's already happened. Kenny Omega is the champion of AAA right now.
Wow.
There's a lot of crossover.
We've got the
already.
Japanese stars right now going on in a women's eliminator tournament.
Yes, you got all the Choco Pro and Joshi wrestlers in the eliminator tournament. You've got Juice Robinson and David Finlay coming over to Impact from New Japan. I am convinced that all this stuff happening with Tama Tonga, where he's talking shit to the Young Bucks, and the fact that Kenny Omega is using the Bullet Club stuff and he's pissed about that. I'm convinced that's mostly a work. I'm convinced they're setting up something there.
Could you imagine Young Bucks versus Good Brothers versus Guerrillas of Destiny?
Yes, of course I can. And that's kind of that's where I'm going with this is, when we first found out when Kenta first came on the show, I was like, yeah, that's just because Moxley has the title. They have to figure out a way to do it. Tony Khan said this week that the door to New Japan is all the way open. His words. And that all that's holding them back from really getting some Japanese talent over here is the pandemic, is the quarantining, is all of that. And once that goes away, be prepared for a lot to happen. He also teased that we're going to see some big new faces in the next few weeks in AEW. There's lots of surprises coming in the next few weeks.
Revolution 2 weeks from this weekend.
He said there's going to be some big stuff happening at Revolution. So that, like I said, I wanted to wet blanket it. I did wet blanket on the show. I can't anymore. I want to say, like, look, you're looking at Tony Khan. He's a promoter. It's what they do, is promise the sun, moon, and stars, promise all the stuff, make these big promises. The difference here is that Tony Khan isn't a dyed-in-the-wool wrestling carny promoter. Yeah. He's new to this game. And he's definitely said some things that he's obviously blown out of proportion or been, hyperbole, etc. There's also been a lot of stuff he's said that not only has it come true, but there's stuff that he just kind of underplays, and then it's a big deal.
Right.
So when he says, we're doing pretty well with Japan, we're going to get some stuff going later this year once the pandemic dies down, I sit there and go, well, so much for being a wet blanket. I'm now on fire.
I wonder. Here's my question, though. What secret code? Why is AEW the one to pull this off? What secret code? What special formula? Is it the right talent at the right time that's all had enough in each time in each of the non-WWE companies to make this a real thing and a real possibility? Like, why all of a sudden is this okay when we've known that it's been super competitive for the last 30 years?
It's a perfect storm of stuff, Nick. I mean, if we look at the history of AEW, how it was formed, who formed it, it was the perfect storm of opportunity. You had the right people in the right place at the right time with the right guy who had enough money to go to a network and get the right show and put everything together. You had the right amount of people who were either disgruntled with WWE or didn't want to go to WWE, and they truly wanted to create an alternative. It's something that's been in the works for a long time. People have wanted to create an alternative since WWE bought WCW. Right. And TNA tried.
They did a really good job, too, for a while there.
Sure. Ring of Honor was never interested in being the alternative. They just were doing their own thing. So there was never really anything that came along, again, that had the perfect storm. Who was going to come along who had the passion for wrestling and the money, like Tony Khan?
Yeah.
Right? That's a very specific individual. And then to have enough people around him who knew what to do with a wrestling company so that he didn't make the kind of mistakes that like a Jim Herd or a Eric Bischoff would make.
Dixie.
I mean, Dixie. Again, I'll put a caveat on that. AEW is still very young. There's still plenty of time for him to screw up. But right now it's looking like all systems are go. So it really was a perfect storm of everything coming together. And then things going like gangbusters. I mean, to think that in some ways this came around because of a bet between Dave Meltzer and Cody Rhodes.
If they could sell out 10,000 seats or something like that.
I bet an indie company can't sell out 10,000 seats, and Cody goes, I'll take that bet. And people, I was looking at the numbers for it, and it was also one of the fastest selling wrestling shows in 20 years. Like the hype for All In was insane, and All Out and Double or Nothing. Like they kept a consistent, like the excitement was there. People wanted the opportunity to have an alternative.
I was going to ask, why do you think that happened the way that it did? Was it just a good marketing and social media campaign? What was the underlying hope, hype that drove that sellout that fast?
It was everything involved. It was who it was. It was the fact that it was a WWE alternative. People were fed up, and there was enough lapsed fans from WWE who wanted an alternative. Obviously, WWE is still doing relatively fine. Like their numbers are going down in some sense, but then their revenue's going up. So WWE is doing fine. There's lots of people who still like watching WWE, and lots of people that were excited for All In also are excited for WWE. But there's also a ton of people who wanted a mainstream American alternative, and this was it.
Yeah.
And so it was that excitement that everyone loves novelty. Ooh,
gimmick,
something new. Yeah. Could it sustain? Well, we're in, a couple of years now. Yeah, it can sustain. It did sustain. It survived a pandemic, for God's sake, which I think that's about as gnarly of a test as you can imagine.
Succeeded in a pandemic, I would argue.
Yeah. Showed WWE what's what a couple of times. WWE took their formula for a while of where to place cameras and how to deal with
especially in the early days, yeah.
So it's, in some ways it was I would agree, a success. But so now we've established AEW's a success. People want to go there. AEW is creating an environment where, much like the territory system used to be, we can all work together. And part of that is because WWE is creating a system where you can truly be an independent contractor. And that's those two big words we're hearing a lot of lately when it comes to wrestling. Even politicians like Ted Lieu are getting into it and saying, hey, WWE, your business practices are very sketchy with calling these people independent contractors, but then holding them to these very tight contracts and not letting them out of them and taking away their alternate revenue streams like Twitch and Cameo, saying that they can't promote charities. Although I did hear that Sami Zayn, Sammy for Syria, has been allowed to be promoted by Sammy, which is good. So there is a marked difference there. Where an AEW, even like they make light of it on their show. They say, hey, oh yeah, you want to catch them? You can catch them on Twitch. Wink, wink. Yeah. Right. Because we allow that here because they're truly independent.
It's not just a promotion for the talent. It's a rib to WWE as well for doing that to their talent.
A little bit. Yeah. Yeah. And talking about like shots across the bow is a topic for another conversation. Yeah. But the bottom line is that, AEW allows a lot of things that WWE doesn't. They are a true alternative to WWE. Now, that doesn't mean that WWE isn't still a place people want to go. They obviously do. We saw just this last week, the WWE Performance Center signed its biggest class of all time. 18 people. 18 people in this new PC class, including Taya Valkyrie, Bronson Rechsteiner, who's the son of Rick Steiner.
Damn.
You've got Cameron Clay, Joe Areola, Taylor Grotto, Carissa Rivera, Christian Brigham, Priscilla Kelly is now Gigi Dolan. You might have seen her already.
I didn't know that. Drew
Casper, Brianna Coda, Christian Hubble, Matrix Belton. I said Cameron Clay already. Teresa Serranono, who's now Zoe Stark, who we saw in you've seen Zoe Stark. She's already been on. She's had a great match this week with
I haven't
Io.
watched it yet, but I've heard nothing but 5-star rave reviews.
Harlem Bravado is now known as Chance Barrow. Anthony Henry. We've already seen a lot of Parker Boudreaux, who's already being talked at as the next Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, he had that sort of reveal picture with Eva Marie or something, which makes me wonder, is she going to be a valet of sorts of his?
He's already calling himself the Destroyer of Gods.
Oh, yes.
Which is
Bring it.
interesting. Angela Arnold, and, of course, Sean Ricker, who's Eli Drake, a.k.a. now L.A. Knight. So huge PC class. Everything from indie stars to collegiate athletes to sports stars to established indie wrestlers, or even like mains like Taya Valkyrie. I don't know if you can call her an indie wrestler. She worked for Impact.
She was the Knockouts champion.
Yeah, so major figure. Yeah. So, and obviously with some of them like Taya, we can say, oh, she wants to go to WWE. Her husband's there. It's kind of a nice way for them to be together. With other ones like Eli Drake, why did he choose WWE over AEW? Right. And you have to wonder with a lot of people, okay, what is WWE offering as opposed to AEW? In some ways, Nick, WWE, tell me if you agree, is still the big leagues.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Well, the question I've been thinking about while you were going through that stuff was, has AEW delivered on what they said they were going to do? They were going to break down the contractor stigma. They were going to provide health care eventually for their talent. I'm looking at things like, I almost want to, I don't remember a lot of the stuff that like Nick and Matt Jackson especially were making a lot of promises in the early days before Dynamite launched in 2019. And I'm curious if they've delivered on a lot of those promises, or if there's just more of the same of what they're used to. And I'm wondering if the talent even wants that, to be honest.
Well, from what I can tell, as far as the healthcare, it's not the actual. I have to go double check myself. I know that anyone who's contracted gets healthcare, but I'm not sure if that extends to, like, when you see someone announce they're all elite, it's like so-and-so is all elite. It means they have an exclusive all AEW contract, right? And that's actually one thing that I wanted to talk about when we talk about the independent contractor thing is AEW has a ton of people who you see week in and week out that aren't contracted to AEW. They just bring them in for a week.
Yeah.
Like for a while there, and possibly still, I got to double check the roster.
Here's $500
right now.
Come have a match.
Brian Pillman Jr. He was contracted with MLW. I believe, I don't know if he got out of the contract and signed with AEW yet or not. I got to double check that. I know he was trying to, but he was locked into his contract with MLW. But AEW said, he was like, I want to come down. I want to hang out ringside and maybe wrestle. And he did as an independent contractor. So they're allowing that sort of thing to happen. And that way they can also test out talent and see if they want to work with them.
Is it a situation where we don't know what we don't know, what goes on behind the scenes, in the sense of those different varying levels of relationships? Like, what about Jake Roberts that has no in-ring action? Is there a differentiation between in-ring talent versus managers? Are they getting paid different and treated differently? Are they treated like full-time employees as a la the corporate folks and executives and such, or are they independent contractors just like the in-ring talent? That's something I'd be curious about, because that has implications.
I would imagine that they have differing contracts, because from what I understand, the contracts vary wildly for AEW in terms of length, in terms of what you're getting, but that makes sense given the situation that they have, where you have everyone from Jon Moxley, who you want to throw all the money at and all the things and just give him whatever he wants, and someone like a Brian Pillman Jr., who you're like, I'll give you a short-term contract, see how you work out.
Well, Xander's dropping some knowledge in the chat for us that I wanted to read out here on the show about Pillman Jr. He says, he was my promotion's Super Indie champion, but he dropped the title this past Saturday and is not booked to return for the remainder of the year. I assumed that was due to the AEW contract. So Pillman Jr. might actually become all elite, if I can do air quotes, sometime after this week. So, yeah, it could be very interesting to see, to understand all of the different dynamics and how you said it varies wildly. I would love to understand better how they organize behind the scenes, and if there's any sort of, I don't want to say org chart, but pecking order, hierarchy, producers, assistants, things like that. I'm sure they've got all of that sort of behind the camera talent, I'll say. Makeup and costuming and all of those things, right? Camera operators, and like those are all going to be union gigs as contractors, most likely, but you don't know because of Florida.
Right.
So I'm not. I'm more morbidly curious than actually genuinely interested. If I'm being completely honest, it's just my own curiosity that's got me curious about it. It's not, at the end of the day, it's not going to change my perspective of the show.
But the Brian Pillman, in particular, let's use him as a straw man here and say, like, that's a good example. And thank you, Xander, for that info. That's actually interesting to know, because Pillman has been very vocal that he wants to work for AEW. He's like, this is my dream job here. I get to work with people who worked with my dad, who loved my dad. I feel like I can really prosper here. I want to, so he's out there trying to make the best impression week in and week out. He's not a big name yet, right? Obviously, historically speaking, and in terms of, he's got a big shadow over him from his father, so he has a lot to prove. So he's got a very famous wrestling name, but he himself personally has not really proven himself on a big stage yet. He's getting there. But he's a great example of someone who's going to come along and wants to be with AEW. That's his dream job. But then you look, and like I said, WWE is snapping up tons of people who want to be in WWE. That's their dream job. Why is AEW missing a trick and not catching Rey Mysterio last summer? Right? Why are they letting Taya Valkyrie go to WWE? Maybe because she's, got the Morrison angle there. Eli Drake, why couldn't they pick him up? EC3 just signed with Ring of Honor this week.
Yeah, he can't seem to find a home, that guy.
Ben Carter was in AEW for a hot second, then I got snapped up by NXT UK. Dare I say, Marty Scurll? Who knows what's going to happen with him?
True.
He's now showing. He's showing up not on TV yet, but he's at New Japan Strong, trying to get back into New Japan. Whether or not he will be accepted back in or not is a whole different thing and a whole different conversation about Marty Scurll. But the fact of the matter is, there's lots of people who are running around out there who aren't necessarily chomping at the bit to get into AEW. They want to be in WWE. And that's because WWE is still the big leagues. It is still watched by the most people. It still has the most international platform. It is the bigger jumping off point. AEW is still the scrappy secondary alternative, watched by under 1 million people a week on their flagship show. They're doing great for what they are, but they're not WWE. And they're not in WWE's league in terms of production, in terms of exposure, in terms of a lot of things. So you can have like your wrestling purists like FTR who are like, man, screw WWE. We're not wearing these Joker outfits. We're going to go to AEW and get treated the way we want to be treated at the expense of exposure. Yeah. You have people like Brian Pillman Jr. who's like, this is the kind of wrestling I want to do. This kind of environment I want to be in. But then you have people like Taya Valkyrie who, Nick, I don't know if you would agree or not, are going to go to WWE and that they're going to flourish there. She would have been a huge get for AEW because they do have a bit of a thin women's roster in terms of star power. She'd have been a huge get. But she's going to be great over in WWE. That's
especially
a great
in that
environment
women's division in
like
NXT.
Her. Right. Oh, she's gonna be fine.
I think a lot of that probably had to do with quarantining rules between the companies, and those two weren't allowed to be together, and they frankly probably just missed each other. Probably an element and also of that influenced that decision. So I'm not sure I would blame it on AEW versus WWE. I'm sure there was a big heavyweight influence of her being able to actually see her husband.
I'm sure she's looking at lots of different contracts. Davey Boy Smith Jr. says he'd like to go to WWE because he has lots of friends there, and he would be a big get for AEW. Yeah. There's a lot of people running around like that. I mean, it helps that Taya Valkyrie's probably going to go to WWE, and Vince is going to take one look at her and be like, oh, it's Lucha Charlotte. I love it. Yeah, put her on TV.
Lucha Charlotte.
But you look at someone like Big Show, and as great as WWE is, he's done all he can in WWE. Time to go to AEW. And that brings us to that idea of independent contractors and having an alternative. You can walk away from WWE these days and, be like Brody Lee and go to AEW and be a huge star. You can walk away from WWE and make millions of dollars on your Twitch stream like Zelina Vega, like Thea Trinidad. You can walk away from WWE and get jobs in Impact, in New Japan, in arguably Ring of Honor once things really spool back up. And that's the other thing is we're seeing these moves being made in a pandemic. There's not really any indie wrestling going on right now. Not the way that we're used to with crowds and everything. Like you're not really able. And Xander, maybe you can comment on this in the chat as well.
And what's PWG doing there in Los Angeles? Are they still running shows?
No, they can't.
Right.
They
Bar
can't
wrestling's been down.
Well, bar wrestling's down for a whole different reason.
Oh well, we don't need to pick that scab again. But yeah,
right, yeah. but there's lots of promotions out here. None of them are running. At least, very few of them. There's some that are running out, obviously, and there's, they're trying to mask everybody up and keep social distancing. And it's not the same for obvious reasons. My point is, all of these moves have been made in a pandemic. This is going to speed up. This is all going to accelerate as the pandemic subsides, as vaccinations get out there, herd immunity happens, like over the next year, as everything. To use the word get back to normal might be a little bit optimistic, but, get back to things that we recognize, Nick, I think might be more
I don't know
accurate.
that I will recognize the way we were before, honestly. Fun fact, I'll share this with you guys that are here.
Oh, Jesus.
That's from 10 years ago. I went to the office today for the first time in over a year. It's like and it was so foreign and awkward, and I felt a little bit out of place, which is foreign for me, for somebody who's been at this place for 10 years in some way, shape, or form. So I don't know. There's two things I want to say here. I don't know. It's something we talk about in tech quite a bit. We don't think we're ever going to go back to the way that things were before from a 9-to-5 job perspective. Remote work the pandemic has forever changed the way we go to work. Unless you're a shift worker or have a factory kind of job or a line job or anything like that, or you're in the services industry, desk corporate jobs are forever changed. Remote working is the new normal, and we're never going to go back to that. Where I'm curious is I almost play the hypothetical out in my mind of all of this forbidden door talk that we're doing and this cross-pollination between these different promotions that's happening. Can you imagine if they hadn't said anything and Kenny Omega just walks out on Impact with no preamble or whatever? We would have lost our minds. It would have been like AJ showing up at the Rumble unannounced.
Well, we did, and they announced it. We did. We lost our minds when they announced it. Here's the thing. You bring up a good point that things are not going to necessarily go back to normal because we've seen too much. WWE has operated for the last 6 months with a captive audience. Yeah. They've had an audience they can tell to put thumbs up, thumbs down, cheer when we want you to, boo when we want you to. We can pipe in the noise, and no one complains about it. We used to bitch and complain when they'd have a live audience for like SmackDown, and they'd pipe in boos for the people that people wanted to cheer the heel, and WWE would pipe in boos. They have an audience they can fully control now. That's what they've always wanted. How are they going to be able to go back to lively crowds who don't always play their game? I mean, are they going to? Also, alternatively,
of course they are. They have to sell merch viewers, and concessions and all of that stuff.
But I mean, what they've learned a lot of things.
Not to mention the door. That's not money they're going to walk away from.
They've learned a lot now. They like how to manipulate like their audience and create like they might have found different ways to even manipulate live audiences. So what if you do like produce a live audience the way that they've been producing the Thunderdome audience?
What if you have a way to completely cut out? You can remove the mics or cut down the mics from the PA or from the stands, and you can still pipe in your music to the TV.
I remember
people watching
recently
on TV.
A WWE. A long-tenured WWE producer retired, and he said the toughest thing they ever did technologically was going from mono to stereo. And now as you said, Nick, like they've learned a lot of like the miking technology, where to bring mics up and down. They've had this whole time to catch Roman Reigns whispering at people.
I don't know that would have. Roman Reigns might not have. I think we talked about this on the show. I don't think Roman Reigns' shtick, as it is right now, would have worked with a live crowd because he's talking like this all the time. And like, why are you doing this to me?
Paul Heyman, tell him what really. But that's we're getting a little bit sidetracked.
Yeah.
The point that I'm trying to make is that, I mean, we're also as audience conditioned now to watch wrestling with no crowd. Bloodsport these last couple weekends was awesome. And you can start doing that where you don't even need a crowd. You can make your own wrestling without a crowd, and people will look at it and be like, "Ah, yes, it's like pandemic wrestling." And we will accept it. We won't just be like, "Ah, this is crap. It's weird. I'm not used to it." It opens up a lot more doors. Yeah. And what opening doors does is create more possible and available talent. What that does is create more possible people that can filter into the indies and therefore up to the big leagues like WWE, Impact, AEW, and New Japan. And at a certain point, you're going to have so many people that are vying for these spots. Already we're seeing with AEW that they're starting to get kind of full at the top.
Yeah.
They're not just picking up anybody anymore. WWE is signing a ton of people. They also released a ton of people last year in May.
Less than a year ago, yeah.
Yeah, they released a ton of people, and now they're getting all this new blood in here. So there is WWE has done that before. They'll cycle through talent. But now that talent isn't just filtered out of WWE and they're gone forever.
Right.
Now there's going to be tons of alternatives, not just AEW. But in addition, with AEW having this door open, people can, like Matt Cardona, come through AEW on their way to somewhere else. There's going to be theoretically, now that this forbidden door is open, there can be not only a singular alternative where people who are frustrated with WWE can go, like a Paul White, but you're going to see people that say flunk out of WWE or get frustrated and leave WWE or anywhere else, Ring of Honor, anywhere else, and they're going to have a bigger level of exposure possibly there with these alternatives.
This is also something that's starting to, if I can go on a little bit of a monologue for a second, because this analysis is something that I think is extremely relevant to the last decade specifically. If you look at all of the major sports organizations out there, NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, right? Those, just take a look at how they deal with talent. The NFL locks people into franchise tags, long-term contracts, excuse me, and they deal with salary cap, right? That's one of the things you have to deal with. On the flip side of that, in Major League Baseball, there's no salary cap, but they sign people to like 10-year career contracts, hundreds of millions of dollars, make sure that they're not mobile, is the point. If you look at the NHL, they draft them out of high school and college into minor leagues, and they leave them in farm teams until they're useful, and there's not a lot of mobility between teams because of the way their contracts get structured. Where all of this changed was by one man, and his name's LeBron James. LeBron James in the NBA changed something when he left Cleveland and went to the Miami Heat. And D-Wade was there, and then Chris Bosh joined them, and he proved that leaving one place and going to another and surrounding himself with talent could win championships. You know what? Then he did it again, and he went back to Cleveland, and he won another championship there. And then you know what? He did it again, and he left there and went to L.A., and they just won another championship.
It also helps to be LeBron James.
Fair, but hang on. But so there is a button to this. So we've now proved, if you look at the Golden State Warriors, that's exactly what happened. They just took it to another level where they just put together basically a dream team, the equivalent of the 90s dream team, and they brought all these stars in and just went on. They built a dynasty out of it throughout the 2010s. And then it sort of fell apart as the stars got bigger and they split off and they went back their own ways. No other sports organization has done this the way the NBA has until, I would say, AEW has shown up. AEW has come in and somehow figured out how to make wrestlers mobile and move them around to different things. As you said in the beginning of the show, much like it's a throwback to the 70s and 80s territory system pre-WWF. So, I mean, before we had all of this organization that we've got now for the last 30-something years, it feels like we're going back to, oh, my God, you've got Jerry Lawler in Memphis promoting the fact that Ric Flair is going to show up from Charlotte. And it's like, oh, my God, we can't miss this show. Kenny Omega is going to Impact with the AEW.
Right.
Oh, my God, I have to watch Impact. Kenny Omega's going over there. This is the kind of, oh, my God, LeBron James is a Laker now.
Right.
That's what I'm saying is like all of this feels like we're opening up in the 21st century. Talent is becoming mobile, and I think we're starting to see a little hint of that in the NFL as well. But none of the other places. But WWE, AEW, and all the wrestling promotions are starting to grab onto this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it wouldn't work if Cleveland was the only team. Where was LeBron going to go? The fact that he can go to Miami and have a viable team, LA and have markets with money.
Hot take, that's what makes him better than MJ. Oh, shit, I'm out.
Oh, jeez. Oh. Luckily, we're not that kind of show. But that's the thing is that, like, you have to have the places to go, right? To be mobile, you have to have places to go. And those places have, I mean, in wrestling, at least, this is where it's not apples for apples.
Yeah. In
wrestling, at least, you can have in NBA, you're contracted to a team.
Yeah.
And this is the point: is if you have the choice of I want to go be contracted with AEW or just like go through there on my way to somewhere else, hang out at AEW for a little bit, and then go to New Japan or vice versa, and that option is becoming viable, especially in a post-pandemic world where travel restrictions are gone. Once those travel restrictions come down, Nick. If AEW is able to tempt away someone as big as the Big Show from WWE, if AEW is able to break down the icy relationship with New Japan and have stars come over, Kazuchika Okada it supposedly has expressed interest, one of the biggest stars, if not the biggest star in New Japan. If you're able to thaw all of those relationships, if they're able to go to Impact and have your champion go over there and possibly have a feud with their champion, however that ends up, it's a whole new world of wrestling. I say that's actually kind of underplaying it. The really big caveat, the really big counter is Tony Khan is new to this game.
Yeah.
And he talks a big game. He said
maybe
that
that's what was needed, frankly.
The forbidden door. And like I said earlier, we're only a couple years into this. He could still screw everything up.
Yep.
Right now, he's saying, I'm the forbidden door. All this stuff goes through me. That's a pretty big statement. It also means that he's in charge of if things go wrong, right? The buck stops here. So if he screws up any of these relationships, it's kind of like a house of cards. Some of it could come falling down, right? Maybe he's helping Impact and New Japan mend their fences a little bit. Obviously, having Don Callis there is really helpful for that as well. Once Ring of Honor gets rolling again, what's their relationship going to be with CMLL, with New Japan? There's lots of questions still up in the air, but one of the big ones is it sustainable, especially when one of the biggest players is a relative newcomer to the landscape of wrestling? And one of his competitors in WWE is literally the big 500-pound gorilla, and frankly is not above using whatever business tactics it takes to take out their competition. Let's be clear. WWE hasn't even started trying to take out AEW because maybe in some sense they realize that having someone who's not really on their level but still competition is good for them. It keeps their talent on their toes and vice versa. Like, yes, their talent does have an alternative place to go, but it's not like people aren't already still wanting to be in WWE. Like losing Big Show to AEW, WWE isn't going to feel that. They're not even going to feel that. That's how big WWE is.
To continue, go ahead, finish up.
I was going to say, we say Big Show going to AEW is a big deal. It is. Maybe not so much in WWE's eyes. They're like, well, that sucks. But, oh, well, luckily we still have 100 other incredible wrestlers, So
to continue the story from a little bit ago, what I was getting on about talent being mobile, go back to the 80s in the NBA. What two teams did you want to be on if you wanted to win championships?
In the NBA?
Boston Celtics, LA Lakers. You had really two choices.
Yeah.
Go back to if you wanted to be in wrestling, over the last 20 years, and you wanted to be you wanted to be super successful, you had one choice. I think the difference is now not only can you be mobile, but you have 4 to 5 relevant places that you can go, be a potential champion, and be super successful. You're not limited to just that one place. Now, I think there's still that stigma that WWE is at the top of the mountain, but I think just below them, there's at least 2, if not 3, that are right there nipping at their heels. And the beauty of that is that it gives people like Big Show, like Paul White, the ability to jump and be just as, if not more successful somewhere else as they become mobile in a very real way.
When you say right behind them nipping at their heels, I'll agree with you only in the sense that they're right behind them in terms of viability as a place for a talent to go.
If WWE went away tomorrow, all of those viewers, I think, would come to one or more of those.
I don't agree with that at all. There's a lot of people that are just diehard WWE only people. They wouldn't suddenly find somewhere else to go. They might
that's a tribalism thing that I think they'd get over.
That. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. That maybe eventually they'd find their way there, but there would be a lot of people that just would stop watching wrestling. And that's my point about WWE. That's why people still want to go there. It's not a one-way street. It's not everyone's leaving WWE to AEW. That's absolutely not the story here. The story here is, and this is really what this whole episode is about, the story here is the Forbidden Door doesn't just mean New Japan comes to AEW. The Forbidden Door being open means there is a viable alternative to WWE. WWE is still extremely popular as a place to go for talent. And not only is there an alternative to WWE, but now it's starting to look like it's not just one alternative. That alternative could mean multiple alternatives at the same time. At the same time. And the kind of the final point I wanted to make here, Nick, and the final little thing, I know Jon Moxley said that it's not worth spending mental energy on. That it's kind of like sitting in your room thinking about what would happen if Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bill Goldberg in '98 had a match. I know he said that. But Tony Khan has openly said to WWE, let's do business. Let's do business. Let's try a crossover. So as much as Moxley says, no, there's no way they're going to do it. I worked in that company. I know how Vince thinks it's not going to happen. He didn't say anything about Triple H. And I have to still wonder what small percentage of chance there would be for some sort of crossover event between those two companies if they would ever want to do business together. We've seen WWE not just be about crushing its opponents like WCW. That was a very contentious relationship.
And be petty about it.
One of the reasons, and petty, absolutely. Yeah. Like all of we mentioned earlier, all the jabs, all the little like winking, like sloppy shop, all the stuff that we're seeing getting thrown back and forth, to me feels more like friendly banter than it does the kind of stuff that went on in the Monday Night Wars. Go look at the kind of stuff they were doing in the Monday Night Wars, doing whole gimmicks that were parodies of the other brand's talent. They were doing episodes where they would openly criticize and talk smack about, and without being a work, about the staff, about Vince McMahon, about Eric Bischoff. It went back and forth. It was vicious. We're not seeing anything like that between AEW and WWE right now. If anything, it's almost like friendly jabs. Yeah. This isn't that same kind of relationship. Vince is okay having money relationships with other companies that he thinks can be beneficial to him. He was funding ECW the whole time that they were sitting there going, WWE is the evil big brother company. Vince was giving them money because he knew that they were doing a good job of raising talent for him. And if he feels like AEW is another company that could ultimately benefit him, the one thing, and this is the kind of thought I want to leave that on, that particular point, is something that we always refer back to, and that's Stephanie McMahon saying, these days, philanthropy is advertising.
Yeah.
You know what else is advertising? Is making yourself look like a magnanimous company. And if you're willing to do business with AEW, that does so much publicity-wise, perception-wise for WWE. And that could be the angle where Tony Khan ultimately gets that crossover.
Yeah.
And he truly could be the Forbidden Door. That's the ultimate Forbidden Door for me. And that's really kind of that's the coda I had for this episode is The true forbidden door is AEW and WWE working together, and that bridge being crossed.
AEWWE, you mean?
Maybe AEW, yes. As you mentioned in Nick Booking.
I did. Will James threw in 100 bits, said, Nick, you're going to have to move out of North Carolina for that LeBron comment. I've watched The Last Dance 4 times. I love Michael Jordan. But he left at the end and tried to go to the Wizards and couldn't get it done. LeBron James has now saddled 3 teams up on his shoulders and took them to championships.
Well, it's not like Steph Curry's going to go to the Knicks and win a championship.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's not everyone can do that. And LeBron is,
Durant went to Brooklyn and he's mostly fallen off, you know.
LeBron is a good businessman as much as he is a good basketball player. But how do we get why are we talking about basketball?
I'm
This is a
speaking in
wrestling show.
analogies to other sports organizations. I agree with you. That is, but at the same time, while I agree with you that is the forbidden door, until they come even close to opening that one, I'm all in on, pun intended, all in on the one that we're currently looking at between Impact, AEW, and potentially New Japan. We've already got Kenta.
Yeah. I'm going from my position on the show, which was it's not a big deal. It'll be at least 9 months to a year before we really see that, anything really happen. And I'm going all the way to, holy crap, we could see all this stuff happen, including possibly, I'm not going to rule it out. I'm not going to rule out that WWE might see some business sense in doing some sort of crossover. And if you look at the fact that people are defecting from WWE and going to AEW, how long before you've got a bunch of ex-WWE people in AEW? It's not as contentious of a relationship between the two companies. There's a lot of cooler heads, much like they did with New Japan, where they say, hey, there's money in this for everybody.
So to sort of wrap this up, let me ask you another question. Again, for the 374th time since we've been doing this show. One of the biggest speculations in WWE and maybe even all of wrestling is what happens when Vince either steps down or passes away.
Yeah.
He's in his mid-70s now. And it really comes down to the fact of how long can he continue to do it. We know he's going to die in the chair. That's been said multiple times.
Established by himself included.
But we've got to be at a point where we're within a sort of plus or minus 10-year period. So it's more and more possible within the next 10 years that we could see a handover. We've got Shane McMahon back. Are we looking at Shane McMahon instead of Triple H? Those are the things that keep me up at night. Is
it going to be a one figurehead? I mean, from what we understand about how the company works, it almost works without Vince right now. He's just he's the guy at the top who says, I want this, I want that, make it so. And everyone brings things to him and he just says yay or nay to it. He's still the filter for everything. But the company's a gigantic machine. And all it takes is for someone to come along who knows how to, pull the levers and push the buttons to operate that machine. And as far as Vince's longevity, Danger Dad, my pops, is going to turn 92 in April.
Damn.
He's not a young man. But you know what? He gets up every day and he still works in his real estate business every day. The dude still he does a 1 to 2 mile walk every day. He can still beat me at pool. He can still beat me at ping pong. Almost 92. I don't know if that man could run WWE. I'm just saying, I look at Vince McMahon and I don't see a dude who's ready to be done. We could have Vince for another 20 years, possibly.
I look at Warren Buffett. He's 90. Gets up every day, puts a suit on and goes to Berkshire Hathaway and stops and gets his free coffee and Dairy Queen every day.
We've already seen Vince. Yeah, Vince has been like, delegating and relegating more and more and more, but he's still the final guy. Can he, and this is something else I look at my pops, because he's really, my dad is he's a one-man business, right? He's got a few people he works with, but he's really kind of, put everything aside and leaned everything out as the years have gone along. I could see Vince delegating more, okay, you're the guy who's in charge of that. You're in charge of that. Just bring it all to me at the end of the day.
Does someone else take over NXT for Trips and Trips starts to step in?
Does Vince still sit? Right? Does he sit in the chair, but phase out from a lot of other things? It's a bit of a digression from where we were in the show.
No,
but
I mean,
it's,
is that
the landscape?
that's the thing? The reason I brought it up
Yeah.
was because, as you said, that I don't see it ever happening when Vince has too much pride, too much ego. He's built something for 40 years now.
You think? Wait a minute. Hold on. Stop right there. Vince has too much pride and ego. This man has brought Jeff Jarrett back. He brought Kurt Angle back. He brought, he allowed finally Macho Man to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. I disagree that yes, does he have a big ego? Does he have a lot of pride? Absolutely. Does he put business in front of that?
Yes, sure.
Oh, yeah. He brought Warrior back, dude.
But I don't think that he thinks yet that would bring business.
Exactly. I agree.
Or there's an element of he thinks he's still top dog and that would degrade what they currently do somehow.
And I think that there is definitely still an elitism to the thought.
That's a better word
WWE.
than pride and ego. Elitism. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Again, this is all speculative. We don't really know what's going on in those boardrooms. Yeah. But that's my perception. That's certainly John Moxley's perception. He's more of an expert than we are.
Yeah.
That's his opinion on it. It's not worth spending time on, even though we have. But I wanted to spend time on it because, unlike Moxley, I don't think there's a 0% chance. You know what I mean? It's not a big chance, but it's not 0%.
It's not impossible, but it's also not likely.
That's also why that is truly the forbidden door. And that's that's basically the thought I wanted to get out. And that's what this show is about. So thank you guys for going on that little journey with us. Thank you for going on that kind of thought experiment with us.
I'm glad we finally got to talk about it out loud.
Really, one thing I wanted to do also was get some Nick booking in there, but we kind of ran out of time. I wanted to get like Nick's top 3 matches. Let's do that. Nick's top 3 matches. If all of the forbidden doors were to be open, all the forbidden doors were open, what are your top 3?
Oh my God.
Top 3 right now with the rosters they
Kenny
have
Omega, Drew
right
McIntyre.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Oh, come on, Nick. Bobby Lashley versus Brian Cage.
Okay. That seems like a fairly... All right. That seems actually like they could do that because neither one of those guys are like the faces of the company, really.
Yeah.
But how that happened? You just like all the kinds of muscles in the
big,
ring, don't
big
you?
boys.
Let
me throw a woman's match in there. What?
Just to try to get your cred back. Oh, I want to see all the muscles. I need to do a woman's match too. Excuse me. Oh, my stars and garters. They got a little bit hot under the collar there.
Trying to be diverse. Trying to be inclusive.
Oh, okay. All right. Women's match.
Let me see. Who are the best workers? You got to think about Charlotte Flair. But if I were to pick one from, that's the problem is you'd have to. It's tough to go outside of NXT and WWE to find talent on that caliber.
Mm-hmm.
Oof.
And the women's division.
That's what I meant.
WWE definitely. They had the women's division locked down, man. Look, Impact has got a great women's division, but in terms of star power, WWE blows them out of the water.
I'm trying to think of things like work rate. We've got Kaylee Ray also over but that's still NXT. That's UK. So I'm thinking like, who in AEW? Thunder Rosa versus Charlotte Flair would be a lot of fun.
I was thinking versus Asuka, but yeah, Charlotte.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Yeah. So what about you? You got any you want to throw in there?
Oh, I always want Tanahashi versus Cena, but that's just a whole other level.
Roman Reigns versus Okada.
Yeah, Reigns Okada would be freaking awesome. Or actually more what I was going to say is Seth Rollins versus Okada, just in terms of wrestling.
I'd put him and Ibushi together.
Touche. All right. Yeah.
Oh, right. Just thinking about oh my God, just thinking about that.
Look at you. Look at Well, on that note, now that Nick's nipples are hard, we're gonna get on out of here, everybody. Thank you so much for being patrons. Thank you for listening to our show. Thank you for supporting us. We are eternally grateful to you guys. You guys rock. You are phenomenal, each and every one of you. We appreciate it so much. We will be back tomorrow, our Friday show. If you're listening to this us live right now on Twitch, thanks to everyone who showed up on Twitch for the live show. That's awesome, out of nowhere. Very cool. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about SmackDown, AEW, and NXT from this week, of course. And then, next week is Revolution. Next Sunday is Revolution.
2 weeks.
Week from Sunday? 2 weeks from Sunday?
No, you're right. It is a week from March
Sunday,
7th.
man.
March 7th, Revolution. 2
my
weeks
God.
later, we've got Fastlane, and 2 weeks later, it's WrestleMania. It's WrestleMania already!
Oh my God, here we go again. And if you're listening to this way down the pike, if you became a patron later on and you're listening to this years down the road, months, years down the road, how do we do? Were we on? Were we somewhat accurate in our thoughts and predictions? Or are we completely out of our minds? That's going to be.
This is one of
something
those,
interesting.
much like
Come
we
back and
did with the
listen to.
NXT one last year, where we graded ourselves. This is one of those that 2 years from now we need to revisit and be like, how'd we do?
Come back and be like,
right?
whoa, man, we really had no idea that other
We were
company was
so
going to come
wrong.
along and just buy NBC bought WWE, and Eric Bischoff came along and killed Tony Khan and absorbed his company, and now Eric Bischoff runs AEW. It's absolute madness. Japan was annexed by China, so now New Japan is known as New China Pro Wrestling. It's all bizarre, Nick. We had no idea.
Hulk Hogan turned on Vince and came over to AEW to run around with Kevin Nash. He's still there.
Hulk Hogan's new gimmick is to be like Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder. He's now a black man. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming to listen to our show. We love you very much. We very much appreciate all of you, and we'll be back very soon.
Guys, you know where all the links to all the stuff are. Thank you guys for being with us today. I'm going to take this down immediately afterwards, so if you're here for the live stream, enjoy. Make sure if you're not a patron yet, you enjoy the next one. But until next time, my name is Nick Howell. You can find me on Twitter at DataCenterDude.
I am Sir Ian Dangerous. You can find me on Twitter at Sir Ian Dangerous.
My God!
Somebody stop the damn time!
This show is part of the Orbital Jigsaw Network. For more episodes, subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher Radio. For details and show notes from each episode, check us out, orbitaljigsaw.com.